The topic of today's video is going to be discussing poverty, which I'm really excited about because it's a really important issue um, for me. And just personally, I just believe this is very important to talk about. So I'm really happy to have a video devoted to this issue and specifically addressing Lightfoot's recent speech. About 2 weeks ago, she made like an hour long speech about talking about her anti poverty summit that she created, I think, 2 years ago. And she was talking about the things that she's done while in office to reduce poverty. So I'm not going to be getting into everything that she said. I'm just going to be addressing her main points and the things that she said during her speech that I took an issue with. And so if you want to listen to the whole thing and just get more information about what she's talking about, I'll leave a link probably in the description or in the comments section if you want to watch her whole speech. And so, yeah, I'll just get right into it. So, there's a lot to talk about. Again, this poverty is a very heavy, complex issue. So, I'm going to be getting into a lot of things that she said and some things that I will propose as a candidate for Chicago mayor. So, the first thing I want to bring up, uh, and then I'll get into the main points. But she talked about helping small businesses and small businesses and just businesses in general. They've been heavily impacted, of course, by the public health emergency because of the lockdowns and because just problems with uh, money. So, their employees getting sick and leaving and things like that. So they've been struggling financially. So Lightfoot talks about helping these small businesses, but the thing is that um, a lot of these businesses in Chicago are leaving the city because of issues of crime happening in the city. So as mayor, you have to be able to juggle a lot of different issues, which isn't hard. It isn't easy, but she really hasn't been doing a good job of just juggling all these issues. Like you can't fix one issue and then you have another issue that you haven't even addressed or like haven't addressed to the best of your ability, like crime. Crime is affecting these businesses also, not just COVID-19. I would say that crime is at the moment affecting these businesses more, but I'm not sure the data on that. That's just in my opinion, but it's definitely crime is definitely affecting these businesses and causing them to move out of the city, which is causing the city to lose revenue. And I know that's a fact. That's not an opinion. So um, it's not just COVID-19 that's affecting small businesses. So if she really wanted to help these small businesses, she would also be doing more to combat crime. But she's not doing that, of course. And so that's why a lot of these small businesses in Chicago are um, struggling. And also, I wanted to say that uh, poverty has, of course, been around long before the pandemic in the city, in the country, all over the world. And so, just to talk about it, like because the occasion calls for it, like she's having this talk because it's the anniversary uh, of her anti poverty summit. But since poverty has been affecting our city for years and years, it should be addressed annually, like a lot more than just once or twice a year, because it's still continuing to affect Chicago residents. Um, so yeah, and So the next thing I want to get into are now I'm going to start getting into the main points of her speech. And so she talked about four pillars that she integrated into this the as the goals of her summit. And so I'm just going to quickly run through these four pillars, and I'm going to compare it with my own four pillars that uh, I made that I'm going to incorporate into my strategies in reducing poverty in Chicago. So, so the first pillar is reducing the cost of being poor. The second pillar is making workplaces fair and more just. And this is verbatim to what she said. Her third pillar is addressing with diligence and determination the healthcare inequities. And the last pillar is foster and increasing community wealth. So these are horrible um, pillars, strategies, with the exception of the last one, foster and increasing community wealth. And I'm going to get into why they're horrible. But first, I'm going to compare it with my own four strategies um, to reduce poverty. My first strategy is, I'm sorry, mindset. Now, um, it is true that you can keep yourself in poverty through your mindset. And what I mean by this is, sorry, my thoughts are just kind of disorganized. I'm trying to. Yeah, so she gets into was it the breakdown of systemic barriers that hold people in the grip of poverty. When I think of the word systemic, I equate that to systemic racism, as like what a lot of people use as a scapegoat to um, for all society's problems, basically, including poverty. And so that kind of mindset that these external forces that the government and that rich people and like all these other forces are against you to like stop you from becoming more successful, more wealthy. That kind of mindset, it just it keeps you in poverty longer. There needs to be a certain amount of personal responsibility too if you want to lift yourself out of poverty. And the mindset of Democrats like Lightfoot that it's always somebody else's fault that you're in poverty, and that personal responsibility is rarely mentioned, if mentioned at all. Um, because sometimes you can get yourself into poverty, and sometimes poverty comes from um, circumstances that are outside of your control. But what I'm saying is, it can't just. There has to be these issues have to be like balanced. They have to be talked about. It can't just be like it's not just black and white. It can't just be like one side of there's different ways that people come into poverty is what I'm trying to say. And I'm just saying like your mindset can either damage you or it can make you better. And as long as you keep having the mindset, it's other people's fall down in poverty and poverty. Um, I can never do anything to get out of poverty. Then then you're always going to be stuck in poverty. Um, So that's what I'm trying to say. And so now this ties into, she brought up racial and ethnic discrimination, of course, because um, this is a lot of what the modern liberal mindset is when it comes to the most important issues of today's culture is race and ethnicity. And so she talked about how race and ethnicity can pose a barrier to building wealth and getting employed and things like that. And so she's saying this as the first female black mayor of Chicago. So that doesn't make any sense. Um, yeah, it's just let me say this. Um, Me as a black woman, it's 2022. It isn't. This isn't 1860s. It's not 1940. The Civil Rights Act has been passed a long time ago. I can vote. I can own property if I want to own property. I can invest in the stock market if I want to invest in the stock market. I can own a business if I want to own a business. I can get a job if I want to get a job. I can go to school if I want to go to school. I can run for public office, which is what I'm doing now. I'm trying to do now. I want to run for public office. I can what else? Uh, there's there are things that I can do that my race or my gender, for that matter, is not getting in the way of me doing. Um, I have rights that my ancestors didn't have, and instead of that fact being acknowledged, people like Lightfoot like to remind everybody that we're still oppressed when we really aren't, and that's the kind of mindset that keeps your brain in this prison, kind of, and it's just like this habitual cycle that keeps generational poverty continuing. When you think like this, it just makes you less determined and more discouraged in trying to get yourself out of these financial hardships on your own or with help. There are plenty of resources out there for people who are in poverty, and but you also have to rely on yourself to a certain extent. Um, there's only, these government assistance programs. They have expiration dates. There's a limit. There's there's some sort of like personal accountability things that you have to do on your own to help your financial situation too. And so yeah, let's see anything else. So there are other barriers that weren't mentioned, that there are barriers to um, employment. If you have a criminal background, if you struggle with addiction, mental illness, if you're uneducated, or if you're just a poor worker. Some people, they can't work with the public because they have a poor personality. So that's another part of personal accountability that you have to be held responsible for. But there are other barriers to employment. That's just not all unfair work environments or whatever she said. Uh, so yeah, and so those are the four pillars. So I'm on mindset. So that mindset is very important if you want to get out of poverty. And so I want to move on to my second pillar, to reduce poverty in Chicago, which is education. And I was going to mention the third pillar too, which is employment. Now, to an extent, these two go hand in hand. I'm just going to bring up a personal example from my life. So, um, for many years, sacrificed employment for education, meaning that my primary focus was school, and everything else came was secondary, including getting a job. And it was a huge sacrifice. It's not something I recommend anybody doing, especially if they were in the bad financial situation I was in, which um, most of the time when I was continuing my education in college and my GED, I was homeless. So I definitely don't recommend um, not working if you're homeless and just focusing on school like I did. Uh, I mean, thankfully, I had a lot of opportunities and a lot of aid that kept my head above water. But you a lot of people work and go to school. Uh, it's not doable for everybody, but um, that's what I did. I focused on my education, and it was a really hard sacrifice. It and yeah, but that's what I did. And so I'm taking a personal responsibility saying there that I'm not in the financial situation. I'm not in the I'm not in as stable a financial situation as I could be and as I want to be, because all those years that I spent focusing on my education and not employment. I'm more proud of my college transcripts than I am with uh, my resume, my job resume. And there's a lot of gaps, just being honest. And I don't have a lot of work experience because that's what I chose to do, was focus on school. So I'm just uh, I'm just saying, that's what I chose to do. But I am saying it was kind of a mistake. If I could do it over, I probably would have. I did have some jobs when I was, in taking classes, but I didn't work as much as I should have. I wanted to get myself out of homelessness and into uh, a better financial situation, like I am now. Um, so yeah, just a personal example. Um, so so yeah, there's education and and employment. Education is really important if you want to build wealth, because it is statistics do say that degree the higher education is, the higher the salary that you're going to earn, which is true. You'll have a lot more career opportunities. You make a lot more money if you go on to higher education. And yeah, it's very important. I really do stress education to building wealth. One of the key factors in building wealth is extremely important, is education. And employment, that's a given. If you want to make more money or more money, you have to get a job. And yeah, if it's an entry level job, or if it's a job that makes more money in the field that you're passionate in, uh, as long as you're trying to earn some source of income. Which leads me to my next point. I believe it's saving. And yes, it is saving. So, this was what I did. I really got good at saving when I was homeless. I um, my own, got made my own got my own bank account. Uh, the money that little money that I was earning from stipends and the little side jobs that I had, I saved all that money. I rarely went out to eat. So um, sometimes, occasionally, I went to see a movie or go out to eat. But I didn't do that. It was very rare for me to do that. Most of the time, I went to school. I went back to the shelter and worked or did homework or um, yeah, I didn't really spend my money on any recreational activities. I was very adamant about that, and I was very careful how I spent my money, how much I spent, and I just had like a mental log of my personal finances and what it was being spent towards and what I could save. So I spent a lot, and I spent a lot to the point where I had several $1,000s in savings, and it was like a really good cushion for me, especially being homeless. And it got to the point where I was not only able to help myself, but also help a family member of mine who was struggling too. So that's just to give you an idea of how much of a cushion I made for myself. So saving is very, very important. Investing is important too, but saving is really important. A lot of Americans don't save; they don't uh, as much as they should. So I still try to make it a good habit to save my money. I used to have a savings account, um, but until I get into a better financial position, I'll open another savings account in the near future, hopefully. But I still do save my money. I still am very frugal with my money and how I spend it, and that's helped me out a lot. And it'll help people who follow the same who do the same things if they want to better their financial situation and get out of poverty. Saving is a big thing. So those are my four pillars. Again, the first is mindset, the second is education, the third is employment, and the fourth is saving. Now, if you want to switch education with employment, there's some people who, um, after they get out of high school, they go straight into the workforce. They don't go on to college. And I don't really recommend that unless, if you have other things going on in your life outside of school that, you need to take care of your family or you're in some dire situation where you just need to make as much money as possible um, in a short time frame and you can't really afford. That's another thing, affordability. A lot of people can't afford to go to college. So there's yeah, there's that. But if you can, I would strongly recommend that when you graduate from high school, that if you can work and go to school, uh, and balance those successfully. Don't just do it, and you can't handle it because maintaining your GPA is important, getting into good schools um, and to getting your degree. So if you can't successfully balance a job and education, don't do it. But if you can, I recommend you try doing it, and just don't go straight into the workforce. Try to build your education too. So Yeah, now she talked about, um, let me get my notes in order. So, all right. Those are my 4 pillars. Looks like I'm pretty much, I covered pretty much everything. Um, Guaranteed income versus earned income. Now, she talked about guaranteed income. There's some pilot programs that Lightfoot has, especially to help people during the pandemic. And the pandemic, it's important to talk about because it is true that the pandemic has exacerbated a lot of financial hardship um, for people, and so it definitely didn't help. But um, I'm just I'm just saying that these issues have been going on long before the pandemic, so it shouldn't just be talked about just because there's a pandemic going on. But it does play an important role in poverty, uh, because it is, like I said, exacerbating these financial issues. So Alifa talked about guaranteed income, and obviously that's not going to work with everybody. Um, People who talk about guaranteed income, it's that should be used very sparingly, for only for the most desperate people who've really been hit like really hard during the pandemic and who really need that. Because I don't want to say that it's not necessary at all. I believe during these times it could be necessary, but just like it's money being spent, so we don't want to just spend money that we don't have, just like spend money carelessly. If we're going to have guaranteed income, let's have it for the families or the individuals who really need it the most. But what I'm proposing is earned income in comparison to guaranteed income, and I still believe that earned income, when you're not constantly relying on the government or on outside aid, uh, will produce more long term benefits to your financial life if, um, how can I say this? If you're relying on yourself, I just believe that, because like I said, this guaranteed income, these social service programs, they have an expiration date to them. So after that, then what are you going to do? You don't have anything to fall back on. That's why even if you are accepting aid, you should still be doing something yourself to further to um, help yourself out of whatever hardship you're going through. Um, yeah, because after those programs expire, if you're relying on yourself, if you're actively looking for employment, if you're keeping a job, if you're working hard, then that's going to produce more um, beneficial results in the long term, long after you've gotten off of these public aid programs. So, what else? Coming on a half an hour into this video, I think I've pretty much covered everything. So yeah, I just wanted to close by saying that um, poverty and homelessness, all the things Lightfoot talked about, income insecurity, housing insecurity, uh, food insecurity. She spent millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into alleviating these problems, but obviously it's still a problem in Chicago. Last time I checked, which was fairly recently, they took a survey this year, at like a census, how many homeless people were in Chicago. There's about 5,000 homeless people in Chicago. That's, of course, not including the whole state of Illinois. It's probably much higher than that. But in Chicago, there's 5,000 homeless people, and about 1,000 of those are unsheltered. So I just believe my pillars, what I talked about, they'll get a lot more done than the four pillars that she mentioned in in producing long term results and getting residents out of poverty. And we'll try it and see. I've been talking about these pillars for my pillars for a long time now. I always, all my videos, I always talk about the importance of uh, education and the importance of talking about issues like poverty and homelessness. I'm very passionate about these issues, and yeah, I'm talking about again in this video and the steps to reduce poverty. And yeah, if I'm elected Chicago mayor, I'll definitely be incorporating my four pillars: the mindset, the education, employment, and savings, saving your money into my strategies to reduce poverty. We'll see. I believe has a strong possibility of working, um, because I've incorporated a lot of these pillars into my own life, and it has personally helped me out a lot. And I believe it could help others too. So I'm going to end the video here. My next video, uh, it'll probably be on Kim Foxx's state of the state of the state's attorney office. I'm sorry I forgot the whole title, but she's giving an address, and it's also about an hour long, and Kim Foxx is going to be speaking on. Um, so I'll make another video on that. But I'm going to end it here.